today I'm joined by the great Al Sacco of the No Huddle podcast. Al, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem. Thanks for having me. You got a lot of sponsors, man. It's like 10 minutes sponsors. Good for you.
Well, this is all through IE Sports Radio. So they're sponsors for IE Sports Radio, and then we promote them through each one of our shows.
Nice.
But, man, thank you for coming on. I've been a big fan of your content. Thank you. We have a lot to talk about when it comes to the San Francisco 49ers because unlike some other teams, there's been a lot of things happening with the 49ers. And I don't know if it's because, I follow the Niners so closely, but I feel like this is the most active team of the offseason in terms of news, but maybe because it's all I follow is the Niners and not like, the Browns or the Lions or I don't know, but it seems like there's so much going on. And of course, I want to start with probably the biggest news that happened just recently, which was the trade of Deebo Samuel to the Washington Commanders. The Niners sent Deebo Samuel to the Commanders for a 5th round pick, which I think was actually pick number 143. And Washington is also taking on Deebo's entire 2025 salary of $17+ million. Personally, I thought this was a great trade for the Niners. He wanted to leave. He wanted out. And at least this gave them something in return. And it took that money off the books that they'd have to pay him for this season. Al, what did you think about this trade of Deebo Samuel?
Well, I mean, the time had come to part ways, and Deebo's was coming off really his worst season. He had the lowest yards per touch from scrimmage in his career, lowest yards receiving per game, lowest yards per carry. He just looked slow. He looked old. He looked like he hasn't been in the league that long, but his style of play and the fact that he plays as a running back looked like it kind of took its toll. Now, is he going to be rejuvenated in Washington? Maybe. We'll see. That's always possible. But I think while it was the right time to part ways with Deebo, just like last year, it was the right time to part ways with Eric Armstead. As you lose these guys who were blue chip players, and now Deebo wasn't anymore and Armstead wasn't anymore, but they were during the run. As you lose these guys, they're very hard to replace.
Right.
And the Niners haven't done a good job drafting or really getting any long-term pieces to replace these guys really since the 2020 draft. Since 2021, they haven't drafted well other than Lenore and Purdy, who look like they're going to be long-term pieces. And we'll see about the 24 draft. That draft looked good. But they haven't replaced these guys. So, is it time to move on? Yes. But you're like, are they a better team without prime Deebo? Obviously not, because they really don't have anyone to replace Deebo. And not that you're going to replace Deebo per se, because it's kind of a different offense now with Purdy where you want to throw downfield more. But you still need to replace that production, replace that weapon.
Right.
We'll see if Pearsall can do that or not. We'll see if they dip into free agency to find someone, because I don't think Aiyuk is going to be healthy if he's even on the team, the way with all the rumors that we're hearing. But I don't think he's going to be healthy till half the season. So a lot of question marks there still.
A lot of question marks. And, one of the statements from Adam Schefter was that this roster is going to take some hits and everyone's going to feel it. I think this is the start of what's going to be a busy offseason for the Niners. This was the first move in trading Deebo Samuel, but it won't be the last. And so we know that there's been talks about more and more moves happening with San Francisco. One of those moves, obviously, is the trade of Brandon Aiyuk. We know that the Niners are listening to offers for trades for Brandon Aiyuk. I know there's a lot of talk about, well, that's going to lead to a lot of dead cap, but it is going to free up a ton of cash that they'd have to pay out to Brandon Aiyuk in terms of bonuses that start April 1st. So, yes, they get to save money on not giving him that straight cash money, but they do take a dead cap hit, which I think they're willing to take because it feels like there's a bit of kind of nervousness in terms of Brandon Aiyuk. Is he going to be the same player that he was 2 years ago, or is he going to be a diminished version of Brandon Aiyuk after you sign him to a big, huge deal? Real quick, Al, let me ask you, do you think the Niners feel more inclined to want to move on from Brandon Aiyuk, or do you think that they're going to try and hang on to him?
This one, when I saw it, I couldn't believe what I was reading after what we went through.
Nobody could. I was like, are you kidding me?
You know what I mean? With the constant trade news and the contract going to the last minute, I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Now, I think the Niners, the mindset they have now to move on from these contracts, it's a year too late. Williams and McCaffrey took you to the woodshed last year, as did Aiyuk contract-wise.
Right.
But McCaffrey is going to be 29. He's an older for a running back. Williams is obviously in his late 30s. Those guys were older, and they gave them a new contract anyway. If you look at Aiyuk, he's young. He was durable. he's a guy that was going to be that next core to build with Purdy. But there was clearly a disconnect with whether it was, I don't know if it was Prague and Jed and Kyle, whoever, that some people obviously did not want to give him that contract. If they did, it wouldn't have taken as long as it did. So now what happens is he has a really serious knee injury. Who knows what he's going to come back? Nobody knows.
Nobody knows.
Now the Niners are like, all right, we didn't want to sign, not I don't want to say everybody with the Niners, but certain people within the Niners are like, we didn't want to sign him to this contract anyway. And now he's hurt. So if we can get out of this, we want to get out of this. That's kind of what I feel like it is, but it's so insane. For a team that won so many games, I feel like to be going through this roster-wise and with some of the decisions that they've made, it's nuts. And it's starting to come to fruition now with, you look at the Lance trade and we're like, oh, they found Purdy, it's fine. But those drafts from 2021 to 23 are the reason they have so many issues right now, that they have so many holes, that they've had to keep paying these aging stars because they didn't really bring any new ones in to replace these guys. They only drafted 4 defensive linemen since 2020. None of them have panned out. So I don't think they've drafted a tackler or a center in the last few years. So they haven't done anything with the trenches. And when that happens, you got to keep paying the older guys that you have, and they get old and they age out. Now, Aiyuk with that knee injury, there's no way he's coming back full strength this year. I mean, he can get back on the field, but that's a massive knee injury. He's going to have to work his way back. You hope he can be productive, maybe not 100% of Aiyuk, but even if he's 70% of Aiyuk this year, and then next year he's back to full strength. But you just don't know. It was a major injury, and it's a huge question mark. And right now it's kind of a black cloud that's hanging over them.
Well, it seems like with these contracts that they're so worried about in terms of they keep using the word cash in terms of how much cash they're kind of dealing out. It seems kind of short-sighted because, look, you just recently made a bunch of these deals and you knew this was going to happen, yet you let it happen. Now you're acting like, well, hey, wait a minute. This is a lot of cash we got to pay. We got to do something about this. And so part of me thinks that, like, look, are they really that naive that they didn't know that this much cash was going to be given out to all these players? I don't think so, unless Jed was just so naive that he let Parag and John and all of them make these decisions and like, oh, wait, this is going to hurt us? Well, I don't get it. I think what it is that I think they're really trying hard to establish the fact that, hey, look, we're trying to reduce how much money we're spending on all these players. Maybe if they won the Super Bowl, that might have changed some things, but they didn't win the Super Bowl. They lost, unfortunately. So I find it kind of strange that they're going about this free agency or this offseason saying, we're really tight on cash. And you hear guys like, Adam Schefter saying, oh, they're tough money situation that they're in. It's kind of like, wait, are they really in this bad situation when it comes to money? Lombardi, he broke this down in terms of like the money that we were saving from, I think, Deebo Samuel. And, he is what he is, but I thought this was kind of a cool breakdown that, obviously you look at that $17.5 million, that was his whole salary for 2025. So they saved that money but on top of that, they're still taking a big hit, big dead cap hit, which they're going to take a hit again when it comes to Brandon Aiyuk. Now, the thing with Brandon Aiyuk is that this here is that these numbers are not, well, he's talking about somebody else. Ayuk's next batch of money isn't due until April 1st option bonus, which is guaranteed. So if he's traded this month, all of that is transferred to the acquiring team. Only money the 49ers have paid that hasn't hit the cap yet is 80% of the original signing bonus. $18.4 million in dead money. So the trade would cost only $7.6 million in extra cap in 2025. That's a lot of numbers and a lot of words that we're throwing at each other here, but at the end of the day, it sounds like they would actually save more money if they traded Brandon Aiyuk this month as opposed to, let's say, later in the offseason. I think there is an inclination that, hey, look, if we can get him out of here and save ourselves some money, then we can use that money to possibly sign another receiver. But then it sounds counterintuitive, right? Like, well, you're getting rid of a guy to sign another guy, but you're still paying him a ton of money. You're still taking a dead cap hit. And so, there's other options out there, such as like Devontae Adams is out there. We know T. Higgins is he's off the market. He's been franchised. But even guys like Devontae Adams or even Keenan Allen, who's been brought up by Matt Mayoko, that kind of goes against what John Lynch said at the combine, which was we want to get younger and we want to get cheaper.
Faster.
So it's kind of like, it's kind of like, so how are we going to do that if we're signing guys like Devontae Adams? Which, don't get me wrong, I'd be all for Devontae Adams coming here on a 1 to 2 year deal. I think that's where he fits in with the Niners if he were to come here on a short-term basis. But when you look at like the guys that are out there in terms of replacing, let's say you trade Brandon Aiyuk, so like the Patriots, whoever, and you likely get draft capital back. That means you no longer have Deebo Samuel. You no longer have Brandon Aiyuk. Can you really rely on a 1 and 2 of Juwan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall?
I don't. Well, I think you saw what it was at the end of the season. The offense didn't look very good. You know, Aiyuk isn't known as a burner, but he is somebody who can threaten a defense downfield. He's a good route runner. He can get open downfield. Jennings is a terrific, he's a tough player. Everybody loves Jennings, but Jennings runs like a 4.8 or 4.7.
Yeah, he's not fast.
So he's not really threatening anybody. Pearsall is a faster guy, but again, is he somebody who can take the top off the defense in terms of game speed? I don't think so. So I think Darius Slayton from the Giants is a perfect fit for the 49ers. I just absolutely perfect. He's a good player who can get deep. He just had no one to get him the ball. But like you said, he's going to cost a lot of money. So are the Niners going to go out and do that? They really need Aiyuk within the wide receiver room. If they don't have him, and they're probably not going to have him for at least the first half of the season. Yeah. If they don't have him, they have issues on offense, and they absolutely need a wide receiver. They 100%. I don't care how much they like the guys on their roster. They need another wide receiver, another veteran wide receiver. Whether they decide to do that with somebody like a Keenan Allen, or I heard Robert Woods, which doesn't excite me at all. No. But somebody like that on a 1 year deal just to help out. Okay, great. Devontae Adams for 1 or 2 years. You're not going to say no to Devontae Adams, depending what the money is. But they're fooling themselves if they don't think that they need a veteran wide receiver, because they really do. I think they're in a little bit of trouble with the receivers if they don't get one. And if somebody gets hurt, they're in even more trouble. So they do have to add a vet there, which is crazy because we're talking about receiver and there's holes all over the defense. I mean, all over. You know what I mean? Receiver, because of what's happened with Deebo and the Aiyuk rumors, that's what a lot of people are talking about. But they have so many other issues.
Well, and that was the thing that, people were saying, well, look what the Philly did. They looked bad the year before last, and now they won the Super Bowl. Yeah, but they already had guys like, they had Jalen Hurts, they had Lane Johnson, Mia Lotta. They had their line virtually set, and they had playmakers on offense, and they went and got Saquon Barkley. So a lot of their money went to the defense, and they drafted defense as well. So they were able to kind of rebound. And I think the Niners are trying to do something similar to that, where I think this draft will be heavily based on defense, even though they need help at offensive line like nobody else does. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do in the draft, especially with that number 11 pick, on who they target first. Yeah. I still think that it's going to be an edge rusher. As much as we need help in the offensive line, I still feel like they're going to go with like a Shamir Stewart or somebody who's there, who's ever a big, imposing, athletic monster of a defensive end. They're going to go with that because they want that pass rush to be better than what it was. My fear is that they're not going to sign really anybody in the offseason. I think maybe 1 or 2 players, 1 or 2 big contracts, and that's it. And the one guy I would love for them to sign would be Drew Dahlman as their center, which I still don't think they're going to do. I think maybe he'll be too expensive, but it depends on how they approach the draft in the offseason. But the offensive line badly needs help. And there was this today that I wanted to share with you, which is this bit of news. Where is it? That Aaron Banks, apparently, according to Tom Pelissero, is going to command anywhere from $18 to $20 million. I thought, are you kidding me?
Insane.
It's insane. And this guy had a horrible season last season, to the point where I was like, dude, get this guy out of here. I don't think the Niners are going to give him this or give him any contract to begin with, because I don't think he played well enough to earn that contract from the Niners. And then on top of that, when you look at this deal that posted today, which is Alex Kappa signed a 2-year deal, a 2-year, $11 million deal. And this guy was the absolute worst at sacks, pressures allowed. He was not good. Mm-hmm. Yet he got 2 years, $11 million. So it kind of makes sense. I guess the market will dictate that Aaron Banks could earn that. But I just think when it comes to guys like Aaron Banks, Alec Kappa, I'd stay away from those guys. I didn't see enough out of Aaron Banks that made me want to bring him back.
No, and I think with the offensive line, I feel like fans are going to be disappointed because if McKivitz, what they're going to do, obviously Pooney, what they're going to do with the other guard spot, I feel like it's going to be like Ben Barch, Spencer Burford. It's going to be those type of guys that are going to
Yeah,
compete. You
I
have
do.
Trent Williams, and they absolutely need to do something at center though. So you cannot run back with Jake Brendel. You can't do it. He's 33 years old now. He was terrible last year. You cannot run Jake Brendel
Terrible.
back. So you mentioned Dahlman. I agree. He's the guy to get, but he's probably going to get 13, 14 million a year. I don't know if the Niners can do that. Josh Myers, I know a lot of people in Green Bay are all over the place with him, and he's taken a lot of criticism, but he knows the system. He might come cheap. He's somebody that he started a lot of games on a good offense. He's somebody that you could maybe see interest in from them, but they have to do something at center. And center's another position where I thought, when Kyle first got here, they made Weston Richburg a priority. Mm-hmm. They signed Alex Mack. I always thought, all right, Kyle's going to want to have his center in here. And then they just kind of went with Brendel. And I know they have Drake Nugent, that they were developing or whatever, but they haven't really addressed it. And again, this year, unless you're jumping for one of those free agents, what are you going to do? So it's one of those things that really has you scratching your head the way they've built the team the last 3 or 4 years, because they really haven't done much in terms of drafting in the trenches. And they don't have guys that are really ready to step in. Don't even get me started on the defensive line, where I think you have Bosa, probably Malik Collins, and I don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yeah.
So you have all these people to fill in. It's nuts. But I know people are like offensive line. I think they'll draft one or maybe two, but probably going to see much of the same offensive line probably instead of center. And then, like I said, those guys at guard.
If their defensive line was fully fortified, I would say, okay, yeah, they can go after offensive linemen, easy in the draft. But looking at a guy that I mentioned earlier, and Drew Dahlman, I mean, this came out saying that he's going to command somewhere around $13 to $14 million range.
Yeah.
And I think that makes sense. I think the Niners could afford that. Do I think they're going to do it? I don't know. It's hard to say with the way that they're coming across this offseason as like huge penny pinchers. I don't know what they're going to do, but this is a guy that I think would vastly improve their offensive line, because, like we were saying, Jake Brendel was awful.
Yeah, I just don't know if they're going to reset. They're not rebuilding, obviously, but this looks like a little bit of a reset season. And if that's the case, maybe they're not going to be very active in free agency. Maybe they're just going to look to start getting younger and faster and start building up maybe around some of these core guys. The flip side of that is, are you going to waste, the last couple years, or, peak years, I should say, of guys like Kittle and Warner and Trent Williams? Are you just going to waste that? So they're in a really tough spot. But if you look at their roster in terms of, like, we're talking, okay, they need a center, we need a receiver, we need this. Look at the defense. Like I said, I think you have Collins and Bosa, and then I don't even know what else you have on the defensive line. So you probably need 3 or 4 defensive linemen. Greenlaw is going to go. I like Winters as a third linebacker, but now you need a linebacker. You have Green and you have Lenore. They literally have no other corners. So you need a third corner to play in nickel situations, and you need a fourth corner because somebody's going to get hurt. So you need some depth there. I love Mustafa at safety, but Jair Brown had a bad year, so you probably need a safety. So you need all those positions on defense. They need a receiver, like we talked about. They still need a second tight end. They need the offensive line pieces. They need another running back, because you can't rely on McCaffrey to really be there for 400 touches again. If he's anything, I think you get from him is a plus. Garendo was hurt all the time. He looks like more of a change of pace guy. And they're not going to pay Jordan Mason $5 million a year or whatever his tag is. He's going to get traded. So you need so much. They need so much. So it's like we're looking in free agency. Oh, we need this, that, and the other thing. It's crazy because how good this team has been, with how many free agents they have. And again, because they've drafted so poorly from 2021 to 2023, you just need so much. I know their schedule is really easy, but people are talking like, oh, can they get back to the Super Bowl? And I'm thinking to myself, Super Bowl? Can they win 9 games? Like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. And the next couple months will tell us what they're going to be. It's going to tell us a lot. And maybe they will surprise people and make some moves and then be more aggressive. We'll have to see how they draft. But right now, I have a hard time seeing the 49ers in 2025 be a legitimate Super Bowl contender, given what their roster looks like right now. They could make noise. They have so much talent still, and they could push for a playoff spot. To be a legitimate Super Bowl contender with the state of their roster, they have a lot of work to do this offseason.
No, I think they do, and this right here talks about how they've been receiving a lot of inquiries on Jordan Mason, so they could look to move him to pick up more draft capital. But the problem with this is, if you move Jordan Mason, then you still have to have a viable backup behind Christian McCaffrey, because
Yeah.
we saw what happened to Christian last year. Even when he came back, he went and got hurt again. You got to have a viable backup. So how much are they going to pay Jordan Mason? I don't know if they do hang on to him. But if they get rid of him, you got to have somebody, a viable backup running back. It can't be Garendo. And so it has to be somebody else. And if you draft somebody, are you really going to make them your number 2 running back? I don't know. But,
This is the season to do it, though, if you are going to draft somebody. Because the draft is loaded. I mean, I'm obsessed with this running back draft class. Now, the downside of that is the last 3 running backs Shanahan took early were TDP, Sermon, and Joe Williams. So
Joe Williams, remember that? Oh man!
But there are just so many. Even somebody like Caleb Johnson, who's just a really good zone runner, would be a good fit. But obviously the top guys, well, Gentry's not going anywhere near them. But I love Hampton. I love Henderson from Ohio State. There's just, the list goes on and on and on of running backs that they can get. So if they want to take somebody early in the 3rd round, this is the year where I'd be like, all right, that's a good pick, because not only are you drafting McCaffrey's backup, McCaffrey's 29 years old and he's coming off a major injury. How much more are you really going to get out of him? I mean, honestly. So I think that they need to draft a running back with this, how good as it is this year, the draft class, get one that you anticipate backing up McCaffrey this year and taking over for him in a year or 2.
Yeah. Well, and one of the concerns I have too is that in this draft is that, let's just say Ashton Genty falls back to, he's available at number 11. I can see the Niners being like, I mean, we need a defensive lineman, we need an offensive line. Let's just get Ashton Genty, and then they just draft him anyway. Like, fuck. Because really, they need help in the trenches. That's really where they have to rebuild this team, is their offensive line, defensive line. Obviously, yes, they have holes in linebacker. They have holes in the secondary.
Yeah.
Johnny brings up Scadaboo. That would be cool. Yeah. He could be a backup running back or even take over for Juice. And that's another guy too, Kyle Juszczyk. They're planning to talk with him to restructure his contract. And if they can't come to an agreement, they're likely going to cut him, which I think is probably going to happen. But knowing Juice and the way he's done his business, I think he'd probably restructure his contract, but we'll see what they do. Yeah. But if they don't and they have to cut him, to me, it's like, hey, look, it was fun while it lasted, but it's time to move on from Kyle Juszczyk.
Yeah. What's interesting to me is Mayoko and Barrows have both talked about Tyler Warren to the Niners. And what I think about that, you brought up Genty. They're at a point now again where when you look, I always talk about their blue chip players. So they were so good, the 49ers, because they had like 10 blue chip dudes, which is insane. But now when you look at their roster, these guys are aging. And how many blue chip guys do you really have for that next window? Lenore probably. I don't know. I wouldn't call Purdy a blue chipper, but he's a very good player. So you have those guys, but everybody else is aging or getting older. Aiyuk, if he's healthy, so they have to bring in guys that they think. Well, I mean blue chipper. I don't mean like, oh, he'll be a good starter. I mean like a stud, a Pro Bowl, All Pro type player. Like that's a blue chip guy to me. So if they have a chance at 11, if they could say, all right, well, we like Shamir Stewart, he has upside, or we could say Tyler Warren's a stud. Tyler Warren's going to be an All-Pro. And that's not a Kittle replacement. It doesn't have to be a Kittle replacement. You can use them both. Yeah. And then he eventually takes over for Kittle. But that may be their thought process too. Like if a Genty or a Warren is there, they'd be like, listen, we need All-Pro type players. Like we like this defensive line piece, but this defensive line draft is deep through round 6. We're going to get the best player available here, put him into our lineup, and then, we'll fill in gaps. Because I think when they draft for what they need, you see what happened the past few drafts. We're like, oh, we need a safety. Let's take Jair Brown. We need a kicker. Let's take Jake Moody. You know what I mean? We need this, we need that. And then you're getting like, you have a roster of what you have now where you didn't take the best player available. You took kind of what you needed. And now you're like, okay, those guys didn't work out. And we have all these other needs. So they have to, if they just take the best dude at 11, I'm all for it. I'm 100% all for it. I really am. I know a lot of people would go crazy, but I think I'm okay with that. So,
you know what? I can't even hear that name anymore. It just cuts to the core of me, man.
Who's that? Moody?
Why did you say that name?
Yeah, let's not talk about Jake Moody. Let's not talk about Jake Moody. Okay, so another thing too is, and we kind of already touched on this a little bit, but I wanted to kind of bring this up was that when you look at Dre Greenlaw, now apparently there is a contract on the table for a 1-year prove-it deal, up to $10 million in incentives. Now, I'm sure there really is, but he apparently, according to Adam Schefter, wants to test free agency.
Yeah.
Because he wants to be, what do you call it? The Mike linebacker. I'm sure if Johnny's watching right now, he's like, no, that's not it. But I don't see how another team is going to give him that kind of money. Like, hey, we're going to bring you in here. You're going to be our lead linebacker. I don't see it based on what, his injury and what he did last season, which is not really much of anything except for half a game against the Rams. Now, he could go somewhere for a lot less, but more years. To me, it would make sense for him to stay here for 1 more year. What do you think? Do you think Dre Greenlaw stays or do you think he's gone?
I think he's gone, and I agree with you. He's a risk because of the injury, but we just talked about Aaron Banks. I mean, if people are willing to pay Aaron Banks that, I would think people are going to, unless there's real concerns about his injury, somebody's going to pay Dre Greenlaw a lot of money. And I just don't think the Niners will be able to match it. And I certainly think he's going to get more on the open market than a prove-it deal. I hope I'm wrong because I want him to come back to the 49ers, but I'd find it hard to believe if he hits the open market, there's going to be a team that comes at him with, I would think, more guaranteed money than the 49ers would be willing to give at this point. But yeah, he's a huge loss. You saw what happened, one in the Super Bowl when he got hurt. Defense fell off a cliff. And just last year, one of their biggest issues on defense was Devondre Campbell. At second linebacker spot. And that's why, again, when you look, the Niners.
Hold on. You said a bad name again.
Why did you say that name?
When you look at the defense, when they were so good, you have those two linebackers flying all over the place. And without him, they felt it last year, and they're going to continue to feel it. They got to try to get somebody to replace him because right now I don't think that person's on the roster. But he's going to be I would be shocked if he came back at this point. And again, I hope I am way off base on this, and he does. But I don't know, man.
It doesn't look good for him to come back, but I hope he does. Another player obviously would be Talanoa Hufanga. I still think that, look, you drafted Jair Brown, you have Malik Mustafa. How much of a contract does Hufanga want? Because I'm not, like, if I'm the Niners, I'm not giving him much of anything. Like, hey, look, you barely played last season, and every time you came in, you got yourself hurt. He takes bad angles. He's not a fast safety. I think there's other options out there in free agency that you could bring in to replace him. And like I said, you drafted Jair Brown. Like, you at least have to try and develop this guy into your starting safety. So when it comes to Talanoa Hufanga, I think he's gone. I don't think there's any way that he comes back unless he comes back for like a veteran minimum, which he won't. But if he did, then yeah, okay, cool, let's do it. But I don't see him coming back. What do you think?
He's another one on the open market. He was an all-pro 1 year. He's going to get more money than the Niners would be willing to give him. But I agree with you. He's played, I think, 17 games last 2 years or something like that. There's no way you're paying him money to come back. And he was a really good pick for them. He was a late-round pick who did well. He had one really strong season and then injury issues. But again, he's not somebody who's going to be a future part of your core. I think that he's gone. Agree with you, Mustafa. I know Robert Saleh's excited about Mustafa. The fan base is. Jair Brown, they have to decide, is he the guy 2 years ago or the guy from last year? And I think Robert Saleh and his staff will probably have to answer that question. Because if they think he's the guy he was last year, he doesn't fit, they do need a safety pretty badly. So, but I don't think it's going to be Hufanga. I agree. They're going to go elsewhere.
And so another big news that dropped yesterday from Jason Lockenfora, whatever. He dropped this, that the 49ers are starting to offer, their starting offer for Brock Purdy is at $45 million per season. How much truth do you put into this? Do you think the Niners really are going to start him at $45 million and not really want to budge past 50? Because the discussion is that they don't have the money to give him to make him like a top paid quarterback in the $50 to $55 million range. Do you believe that? Or do you think they're just gaslighting everyone into think that, hey, we don't have any money and trying to get a cheaper contract for Brock Purdy?
I think this is a negotiating tactic. It may be like a starting point. We know the Niners are tough negotiators. We know, it's been a train wreck, their contract discussions the past few years. They always play hardball and then give in at the end. But, I know Jason takes a lot of crap on the internet when he puts stuff out there. We had Jason on the show. I like Jason, but he came out with that, so he heard it from somewhere. But this is the way I see the Purdy situation, and I don't know where Brock's head is. Brock may be someone who says, "Listen, I want to have a good team around me. I don't give a shit. Give me $45 million a year, or give me whatever, $48 million a year, and let's just sign it and go."
Could be.
I doubt that. And if you're Brock's camp, okay, this is what you're saying at the negotiating table. My client or whatever, he had a top 4 MVP finish. He led the NFL in 8 passing categories 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He's a Pro Bowler. He has 4 playoff wins. He's been to 2 NFC championship games. He's been to a Super Bowl. Trevor Lawrence, Tua, Jordan Love, Justin Herbert have done none of those things.
Dak Prescott
had a top MVP finish, but he's done none of those things either.
None of them.
If you're offering him what? You know what I mean? So like, I don't care what you think. Hey, Justin Herbert looks great. He has not accomplished what my client has accomplished. We are not taking $45 million. We're not taking anything less than $55 million. They'd be very right to say that. And the Niners can come back and say, look, your client had a shoulder issue. He had an elbow issue. You know, we're not sure type thing. So that'll be the back and forth. But unless Purdy says, hey, I'll take a little less, there is no way his camp is coming in and being like, yeah, we'll take 40 something. That sounds great. No way. Look at what his resume is. And I know last year, I thought he played really pretty well the first half of the season.
Yeah, I thought he did too.
He did have an injured shoulder, but the injured shoulder doesn't excuse the late interceptions he was throwing, because it's not like it was like, oh God, his arm just couldn't do it on that throw. He was just throwing right at dudes late in games. So that worries me. I think that Brock is a good quarterback who can be a little bit of a gunslinger at times. I think he needs to take a step back in those situations and just play more within the system, not try to do too much. But I do think his arm was impacted, especially on the deep ball the second half of last season. So the long and the short of that is we need to see more, but they're in a situation where they probably have to pay him right now. So I think what it should come down to is a shorter term deal. You know, it's probably going to have to be in that 55-ish million range. It's just the going rate again for those guys that I mentioned. So if you do a 3-year deal, that's really a 2-year deal, you know, maybe something like that, where you could still kind of get out of it. And he still has a chance if he bets on himself to what will he be, 27, 28 when that deal's up, something like that. He could still get another huge deal. So maybe that's the way for them to go. But what's a little scary, if you're reading the tea leaves with this team, it was like, you know, not too long ago, we're going to sign him. We're going to figure it out. And then Lynch comes out the other day kind of saying like, oh, you know, who knows what's going to happen. Kind of like, oh, okay, that's scary. Yeah. So I don't know where they're going to go if they ever decided to move on with him. And if they do move on from him, you're probably in a rebuild situation, because again, where are you going? You're gonna trade for Kirk Cousins? Like, what are you gonna do?
You're gonna go sign Aaron Rodgers? No.
I mean, come on. Like, Aaron Rodgers was horrible last year. So
dude, I'm telling you, if they got Aaron Rodgers, he would get Kyle Shanahan and Robert Saleh fired in the same season. He would find a way.
Rodgers was awful. If people watched him last year, he was bad last year. Missing receivers. He didn't. I mean, he's old and coming off a major injury. So I think that they're going to figure it out. It's just a matter of that number, and they have to figure it out in a way where it doesn't upend the season, where it's late August and he hasn't been in camp, and then he's got to get up to speed or whatever. They have to figure it out soon, and I think that they will. But just everything that's going on with the Niners is so weird right now, and
so weird. It's
always weird, especially when it comes to contracts. So, dude, all bets are off. I don't know what the hell's going on with this team.
Well, and then there's talk about. There's talk about, you know, they have options. They have leverage in the sense where they could say, okay, well, we're going to play you on your 4th year, and then we'll franchise you the following year and franchise you again the following year. So they have essentially 3 years of control with Brock Purdy. That's saying that Brock isn't going to hold out, that Brock is going to, you know, play nice with the team. If he does do that, then this year you're only paying him $5 million. So you could say, okay, well, hey, guess what? We're going to try and work out this contract next offseason, and if it doesn't work out, we're going to franchise you and then and keep those negotiations going. So that's something they could do. I just don't know how he is going to respond if he's like Brandon Aiyuk and says, "Okay, well, I'm just going to sit in or hold in or even just do a holdout altogether." That could backfire in their face. And then who do they have? They have Tanner Mordecai, and that's really it. Everybody else is gone or free agents, and so you know. You have to be able to understand, okay, is he going to hold out? If he's not going to hold out and he's like, yeah, I'll play my 4th year, then, hey, let's wait 1 more year. I just don't think he's going to do that, because if you franchise the quarterback too, I want to say you forfeit a lot of the guaranteed money for injury as well. I have to look more into it. I'm talking of something I heard, but I think there's more security for Brock if he signs a contract rather than just getting franchised, like T. Higgins, who just got franchised again.
Yeah.
And then, you look over at like Zach Bond. He just signed a contract with the Eagles about 2 minutes ago. They announced that. What was it? It's a 3-year, $51 million contract, including $34 million in guaranteed money. So he's off. He's no longer a free agent. A guy who came in who was almost just a nobody and had a breakout season, and now he's getting a fat contract from that team. And there's a reason why they cut a lot of those players, because they wanted to make sure to sign, obviously some other players as well. Because I think Darius Slay, he got cut, and a few others from their defense. So looks for the Eagles to start drafting out of their defense now, or drafting for their defense now. We're talking with Al Sacco, host of No Huddle Podcast, talking about the San Francisco 49ers. So when it comes to Brock, I mean, look, is he the kind of quarterback, do you look at him and say, hey, this is the guy I want to go with? This is the guy that I want here for the next 3 to 4 years? Or do you think it would be better for the Niners to look elsewhere?
I like Brock, and I want to see more from Brock. I just want to see it on a short-term deal. I mean, and then he's not going to get a 6-year deal. It will be more in if it's a 4-year deal, it'll probably really be like a 3-year deal.
Yeah.
The arm stuff does worry me because he had the elbow problem. He had the shoulder problem. He's not good in bad weather. Some quarterbacks just aren't. But the arm stuff does worry me a little bit. He is a smaller guy. So the injury thing is there, even though he has started 31 games the last 2 years, which is I don't think last QB to do that was Kaepernick, probably in back-to-back years, start that many games. So I do want to see him there. I do still think he can be a good quarterback within the system. I do think he was hurt by his shoulder last year, especially with the deep ball, because he's been a very good deep ball quarterback in terms of numbers wise. But he's got to cut down late games, tight games, those interceptions. That's he's got to cut down on that. There are a lot of bonehead throws that he's been making, and those have to end. Now, if you look at quarterbacks throughout the years, Dak, Lamar, CJ Stroud, Jalen Hurts, in their second full year of starting, all of them struggled to an extent in their sophomore season. Their second full year of starting. So that could have just been what it was too. And this third year is a big year for Brock to kind of see, I think, what he really is. But we'll have to see what he's got around him too.
Exactly. Al, thank you for coming on here. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk some 49ers football with me over here on the NorCal Sports Report. Where can everyone find you and all of your content?
Just on Twitter right now, at Al Sacco 49. I did leave the No Huddle podcast, so I'm kind of looking for my next thing. I'm going to be
sorry about that. Well, you can find him at No Huddle podcast. It was on your Twitter account. I was like, oh, he's still there.
Yeah, I just left there. I'm going to be doing some writing and looking. I don't know. We'll see what else is out there. I don't know. Who knows what my next move is? It'll be something though. I'm always going to be doing content some way, shape, or form. So.
Well, you do good content. So wherever you go, definitely let me know, and I'll make sure to follow you there.
Appreciate
no
you,
questions
so
asked. Of course. Thank you for watching this video. If you want more of this content, then check out some of these recommended videos right here on your screen. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And if you want to support the channel, you can do so by going to my website, which is nicotina.net, and there are memberships available under DreArea Sports.